Je donne toute ma force au courageux peuple de Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you, Leo, and to all of the people who have come today. We're at a critical moment for Ivory Coast, for Africa, for all the people in the world who struggled for decades, in fact for centuries, to be free from colonialism, and who are now the target of the most organized, violent suppression of any force that retains independence, or even nominal independence, anywhere in Africa or Asia or the Middle East or Latin America. The so-called trial that's coming up at The Hague, it's not about justice. It's about injustice. And all people who believe in justice must demand, and say it without fear or intimidation, that President Gbagbo be released, that the trial not go forward, that the court itself is demonstrating not that it is an arena for justice. It can't be an arena for justice, because in a court of justice, some cannot be exempt from prosecution. Some cannot be exempt from conviction. You cannot have a court that only those who have become the targets, the political and military targets of the powers that organize the court, can stand before the court. If it's like that, it's not justice. And what NATO leader has ever been called before The Hague? What American military leader has ever been called before The Hague? In fact, the US government refuses to sign the International Criminal Court, one of the few countries in the world, because the United States says we exempt ourselves from any international oversight or prosecution or accountability. So how can the same government that exempts itself from a court demand that this court try President Gbagbo? That's a kangaroo court, and he and all of those who are held there must be set free. You know, I want to say a word, too, about the International Criminal Court, so-called, at The Hague. You know, the United States government was taken there about 1980, but the Reagan administration, being so upset that the people of Nicaragua had overthrown the Somoza dictator, the US-backed dictatorship that had taken the lives of tens of thousands of Nicaraguans, they were so upset that they unleashed the Contra War, the civil war that took the lives of 80,000 Nicaraguans. That's a lot of people in a country of 2.5 million. And when the Sandinistas refused to give up, refused to say uncle, refused to get on their knees and follow the dictates of the Reagan administration, you know, the Reagan administration put bombs and mines in all of the harbors of Nicaragua so that no boats, no ships, no commerce could take place in Nicaragua. And Nicaragua, a country technically at peace with the United States, said, well, this is clearly a violation of international law. One power cannot put bombs and mines in the harbors of another country, especially a country that it's technically at peace with. So we, Nicaragua, will go to The Hague and seek a criminal prosecution of the Reagan administration for crimes against humanity. And so the court at The Hague met, and by a decision of 15-0, found the United States guilty of international criminal conduct by having placed mines and bombs in the harbors of Nicaragua. To which the United States said, who cares about the International Criminal Court? They have no jurisdiction over us. That's an important thing for people who are trying to challenge imperialism to remember, that when the French and the Americans and the NATO powers talk about the sanctity of the International Criminal Court, the only time that the International Criminal Court had the audacity to prosecute the United States said that is an illegitimate court. When imperialism goes to war against any oppressed people, they never say, our goal is to colonize you. Our goal is to use violence and brute force to subject you to our dictates. They always assign the mission a noble cause. They never say, we're coming to exploit you and steal your resources and your land and exploit your labor. No, we're coming for noble causes. We're coming for democracy. We're coming to uphold an election. We're coming to protect civilians. We're coming to fight terrorism. If they actually told the people the truth, they said, well, we're going to Iraq because it's the second largest producer of oil in the Middle East and we want that. Or we're going to invade Libya, bomb it to smithereens because Libya is the largest possessor of oil resources in the African continent and the 9th largest possessor of oil resources in the world. If they said we're going to drop bombs and kill people and perhaps send people to kill and be killed so that ExxonMobil and Chevron can dominate this resource-rich country, people would say, no, we don't want to do that. So they have to assign it a noble cause. We're going to protect civilians. Even when the European colonizers, the worst imperialist and racist in world history, met at the Berlin Conference in 1884 and divided all of Africa amongst themselves. And by 1902, within 18 years, all of Africa, with the exception of Ethiopia and nominally Liberia, was belonging to the British or the French or the Italians or the German or the Dutch. All of it divided up. Even then, they assigned their colonial mission a noble cause. They didn't say we're coming to plunder Africa. No, they were coming to help Africa. The stage that we in the Answer Coalition believe we have entered, this stage, and we think the invasion, the bombing of Libya was an example, the destruction of the independent government in Ivory Coast was an example. We think the effort to overthrow the Iraq government that did smash the Iraq government was an example. The overthrow of the Afghan government, the attempted intervention now in fomenting civil war in Syria is another example. All of these efforts are representative of a new stage of colonialism or imperialism. And we see now that all of the governments that are targeted by US imperialism and NATO are those governments that have retained some degree of independence in the post-colonial phase. The US government and NATO don't want partners in the former colonial world. They want proxies. They want clients. They want puppets. And even when the governments and the elites of the former colonial powers who are independent seek to collaborate with the US and NATO say, well, thank you very much, but we're still going to overthrow you as soon as we possibly can. Because we only want puppets. So our struggle here today, the struggle all of us have joined, is a struggle that's in complete harmony with the desire of the people of the world not to be puppets, not to be enslaved, to be free, to be independent, to be self-determining. It doesn't mean we have to say everything Laurent Gbagbo did was good, or anything that any government that has been targeted for overthrow. It's not about being necessarily an extension of their political message, but it is a recognition that these governments have been targeted because the imperialists see them as an obstacle to the recolonization of the world. And to the extent that they are an obstacle, we stand with them, because those who resist the designs of imperialism cannot be should not be consigned and labeled as our enemies. Rather, they should be understood to be our sisters and brothers. As they resist and defeat imperialism, that's a victory for all oppressed people everywhere. And from our point of view in the United States, we have to tell the people of the United States, and we are able more and more successfully to tell them, that the government that speaks in our name, that spends our tax dollars, that spends $1 trillion a year, $1 trillion, more than all other countries combined on weapons and war, that this country's government, if it cannot provide jobs for the unemployed, cannot give health care coverage to the sick who cannot go to the doctor when they're sick, and there's 50 million now, not 47 million as there were 4 years ago. If it can't provide a guarantee that the 9 million families who are threatened with foreclosure because they can't pay their debts to the banks while the same government bails out the biggest banks to the tune of $7 trillion, we have to tell the American people that the government that does all this in our name is not really doing it with our consent, and we have to stand up and say no. So we're here in solidarity and with that spirit. Thank you very much.